I want to talk about earth, air, fire, and water. Earth, the kind with which you can build bricks and you can ram down somebody's throat and make them choke. Air, with which you can lift wings and you can blow away empires. Fire, with which you can fuel the void at the core and that you can scar a newborn's face. Water, with which you can give life to a parched flower and you can wash away all life on the earth. The rising tides. The earth is getting hotter. Be afraid to go outside, you'll get burnt. The earth is getting weaker. The core is being extracted, transformed into riches. The air is getting poisoned. Clouds of chemicals, transformations of ancient dead dinosaurs into energy. Energy flows. Who controls the flow, controls the power of the world. Big fat gas pipes. Thin little crack pipes blowing your mind. Say goodbye to tomorrow. Crack warfare. Flood the ghettos. CIA airplanes importing tons of cocaine. Chinese chemical warfare, fentanyl flood. Slip it in the heroin, forget you ever was. Opioid epidemic. Obesity. Too fat to lift your own weight. Starvation. Too weak, empty teats, nothing for your baby to bib on. Trying to replant millions of years of forestation after we have plundered the planet of its natural resources. Plantations. Countries built on genocide and cotton slavery. Broken backs. Chains of scars. Thin tacks trickle down if you're lucky. Pecking order. Big fried chicken. By the barrel down your gullet. Animal feed. Antibiotic. Cannibalistic. Pig to the trough and back again. Brand new ancients. Trying to be reborn into a world which is trying to toss you off its spinning surface. The world's spinning faster and faster and faster and faster. The world trying to devour itself. Autophagic fantasies.
That was the bell. You missed it. You were talking as it went off, but yeah. I've written down a whole bunch of kind of keywords that came up as you were talking. It's sort of, it's like a progression through from the elemental, right? The elements from which the universe is built: earth, air, fire, water, whatever, or hydrogen and helium, or protons and electrons, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But the basic building blocks, the substance of the universe being put into motion. This is energy, right? And then the story evolves to the misdirection of those things, right? The lies, the corruption, the deception, the rapaciousness, the dishonoring, the spitting on that which we came from, the complete inability to just be in it, the constant drive to change it and to seek to improve it and to mold it in our own egoic image of grey, dirty, homogeneous, poopy, destructive nastiness. The vulgarity of excess, the pouring buckets of chicken down your neck, that flagrant disregard for anything that has been before or anything else that is to come. It's just me now, me now, me now, me now. It's a really ugly picture. The notion of malnourishment having been a problem for eons, but now our biggest problem is getting too fat, eating too much and getting too fat. This is another symptom of the perversion of life in the Western world. However, all of that granted and true, it is not the whole truth. And so I want to spend the rest of my turn just pushing back on all of that a little bit and put to you art and self-sacrifice and courage and humility and the addition of beauty to the world, the ability to complexify, the ability to mold the world in beautiful ways that perhaps she could not think of herself, the ability to gaze upon the beauty of the world and be fully conscious and present in that beauty. You know, this also resides in all of us. And so, I mean, I'm guilty of this myself, taking such a dim and dark view of humanity that there is simply no way out. But there is, this is the eternal conflict, isn't there, between the divine and the base, between the ego and the transcendental, between the satiating of desire and the wisdom to know that these satisfactions are fleeting, and you know, to revel in our physicality and yet not get stuck in the base desires that reside in our physicality, to bring together, perhaps for the first time in the universe, the conscious fusion of the physical with the ethereal, you know, in a volitional way. I mean, that's not to say that dolphins and blue whales and whatever hasn't been doing this for millions of years before we ever got here. I'm not so arrogant as to absolutely assume that, but it seems like it could be that, you know, this is the birth in the consciousness, in the evolution of the consciousness of the universe, that this is the birth of self-directed evolution, right? The you know, instead of it being a random process that unfolds messily over millions of years, that this can be directed and pointed and accelerated. But the burden of wisdom that places upon us is enormous, and it's maybe the fear of that responsibility which is making us act up as we are right now.
the universe becoming more and more conscious of itself and being terrified of that which is revealed, becoming more and more aware of its shadow, of the dark matter at its core, and retreating from itself, retreating from the process of evolution, because it realizes that it is so much more than what it once thought, that it is huge and infinite and not just points, just planets, just galaxies, just life, plants, animals, humans, and now, next era incoming, psychotechnological fusion, Dyson spheres sucking up the cores of the sun, smart dust transforming galactic landscapes at the flick of a binary switch in some supra-metamind formed of biology and silicon. The next step of evolution feels like it's just around the corner of the labyrinth. And we've been in this alleyway for a long time. And as we turn the corner, who knows what we're going to be confronted with? Is it going to be another corner? Is it going to be a whole other labyrinth? Is it going to be the end? Will we finally be out? Will we finally be free and enter into something else? Or will we finally have to confront the Minotaur? And only if we can learn to love that Minotaur will we be able to be free. Or will the Minotaur devour us? And humanity shall be destroyed in this process. So go backwards before it goes forwards. One step forwards, two step back, one step forward, two step back, one step forward, two step back. How many times has great species evolved and then been destroyed? How arrogant we are to think that that is not the same that's going to happen to us. So easy for everybody to die. So easy. So fragile. So fragile, the whole thing. And yet we strive for some moment of beauty and aestheticism and art. We try and avoid the perverse inversions where the all belongs to the few rather than to the all. Inverted equations, turned upside down. Psychotechnologies hoarded. Priest castes hiding in temples and castles. The earth belongs to all. All in one and all for one. The earth belongs to all.
I really like the analogy of the shadow to the existence of dark matter in the universe. That, you know, this whole notion of dark matter at the moment is nothing more than an intellectual construct to make equations work, right? That's all it is. It has no reality beyond that yet. And so, yeah, the notion that the invention of this thing is in fact a reflection of our own shadows imposed onto the structure of the universe, right? This dark, mysterious thing which we don't like to look at it, or we can't look at it, whatever, but it's there and it's real and it binds the stuff we can see together, something like that. It's a, as a projection of our psyches onto the cosmos. It's a really interesting it's a really interesting idea. And then, of course, layered on top of that is dark energy, which pushes everything apart, right? It's this dark, sinister force that's everywhere, forcing everything apart. It's like was it Kali, isn't it? Is it Kali, the destructor? Yeah, it's that sort of notion. So yeah, I think all that's really the another thing which occurred was the idea that if it is true that we are just the beginning of the universe truly waking up to itself for the first time, right, to the unimaginable, unlimited potential that it contains within it, if that is true, then what we experience as consciousness and, you know, this rich, fantastic world is but the tiniest, tiniest, tiniest sliver, the first crack which has opened into a whole new realm, right? And it's all we know, and so we think it's the world, but it's not. It's nothing at all. So if that supposition, if that initial supposition is true, we are just at the beginning, at the very, very, very beginning of a journey which is utterly inconceivable to us. So that, no wonder that would fill us with fear at a, you know, at a sort of almost pre-existential level, right? It is no wonder that we are so filled with fear and trepidation. And so the embarking on that, this is Jordan Peterson stuff again, right? Shouldering that and embarking on the journey anyway, even in the face of overwhelming fear. This is the challenge, right? Something like that. And yeah, I mean, historically, not many people have the courage to shoulder really, really, really big burdens, you know. So yeah, and another thing which occurred was this notion of we're right on the brink of something. I mean, I've just been talking about that, that we're right on the brink of something. But I also wonder if, because if you look back through history, there are always people writing about this. This is a great opportunity for change. Yeah, the world is falling apart around our ears. You know, blah 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 blah. This has always, always, always been the case. There's been people talking about that kind of thing, and so I just wonder if this isn't a condition of our psyche to feel that we are always on the brink of some grand thing. Yeah, that we're always on the brink, but we never ever break through, and that this is just part of our condition. This is what drives us forward, is thinking we're almost there, even though there is no there, right? There is no there. It's an attractor, it's a direction, it's a journey into literally the infinite, not that as a hyperbolic use, but literally the infinite. And so there cannot be a place where you are going, right? The whole notion of that is absurd. So the breaking through into this new thing, well, that's happening every single moment of every single day of every single lifetime, is that you are breaking through into a new thing. The problem is that it more often than not looks much like the old thing, right? Because our eyes are not open to the becomingness of things, right? We've got this static vision of the world around us, of these objects which are there, whether we're there or, you know, but the constant becomingness of things is something which is outside of our experience.
Radical uncertainty. The potion of knowing is equal to the proportion of known matter in the universe. The proportion of unknown is equal to the amount of dark matter in the universe. That is how little we know. And we do not dare think about that, because how terrified would we be? Even down to the fundamental ontologies with which we organize our world, all of that is potentially false. You think you have free will? Maybe not. You think you don't have free will? Maybe not. You think you're in a simulation? Maybe not. You think you're not in a simulation? Maybe not. You think you're in a dream? Maybe not. You think you're in somebody else's dream? Maybe not. You think that you can predict the future, works for a while, and then completely collapses. Accident just around the corner. Cosmic calamity. No agency. Find a little psychotechnology which allows you to, oh yeah, reshape a little bit of earth, a little bit of fire, a little bit of water, a little bit of air. And you think you're onto something magical. What huge processes are we potentially a part of? What minute processes are we potentially a part of? Is the universe just our mind turned inside out? Are we the universe turned inside out? No fucking idea. And yet, we've got to try and figure out something. There's some kind of quest, there's some kind of desire to understand inside of our minds, distributed throughout us, trying to make sense of it all. Humans could be at peace if only there wasn't injustice. This is the rat gnawing at the root of life. It's a rat trying to take down a corrupt tree that is stealing all the light and all the land from all the people. Instead of having a forest where each can find their own little corner and participate in the plenty of the fruits, we have one giant motherfucking world tree with some big fat baboons in the top, and everybody harvests and takes it up to them, hoping that they will give us some kind of blessing and through that be saved. How to trick a trowel to dig the garden. Break sweat on the harvest and feed themselves on star crumbs. Don't be fools by the stars in the sky. It's all bullshit, false idols, gold illusions. Monotheistic monomythos, mythomaniac. One God to rule them all. Sacrifice the gods within to the one God without. Don't believe your father. Sacrifice the sacred on the altar of the present. Kronos devouring his children.
Don't believe your father. don't believe your father. I mean, there are times, of course, when you should not believe your father because your father is telling you porky pies. But to have that as a tenet, to not believe the father, that is the road to chaos, right? The not believing the father is in a way the denial of the ontology of the epistemology with which you're presented, right? That is in a sense the psychological embodiment of the father, are the structures that you have and that are put in place, and so yeah, the ontologies may be wrong. Well, an ontology is an ontology, right? It is neither right nor wrong. It is useful or it is not useful. It is that, you know, it allows one to frame one's life in ways which make it meaningful, or it does not, right? It is only to that degree that an ontology is true or not true. It is only ever a construct. And so the notion of truth in the sense of some kind of permanent, verifiable, that, I mean, it just doesn't apply in that kind of domain at all, that notion of being true, it feels like to me. No fucking idea. That is probably that's probably the closest thing to a true ontology that there is. You know what I mean? No fucking idea. But you know, we laugh, but it's really serious and profound point, I think, to know that you have no fucking idea. I mean, this is what the Socratic story is all about, right? Is that he alone actually knew that he had no fucking idea. Lots and lots of clever thoughts and whatever, but actually no idea. And but this is also dangerous, right? Because no idea means, oh well, you can't know anything, therefore there's no point trying to know anything. And that's equally stupid, because while there is always I mean, you're never 100% certain about anything, but there are things you can be sure enough of, right? That you can work as though that was a certainty, even though you have that, you know, that little whatever. So yeah, again, it's that balance thing. It's that just feeling your way into what is right, you know, and right in right is a one-time thing here and now, right? Right does not exist outside of the moment, right? Right, yeah, only exists in the present. As soon as you write it down, it's not right anymore because it was only right then. Doesn't make it right in any other time or place or situation. So yeah, but nevertheless, the notion of right feels deeply right. The you know when something is right. It just so that's like a feeling of alignment, right? That somehow the universe is running through you unfettered, right? It's laminar flow between in the energy between you and the universe, unperturbed as it passes through you. And then there's the whole thing of trying to make sense of the world. Is it not just a self-referential process that all you're actually doing is making sense of your own sense making? That there is no sense to be made of the world in any kind of real way, right? It's only ever making sense within the constructs which you have already established as being meaningful to yourself, whether consciously or not. So yeah, the monarchy is really good for this, right? The freedom of the anarch to not have to make sense, and then deciding the constructs with which you are going to make sense. And
truth is a tightrope. I know that I know nothing is a gyroscopic principle that allows you to maintain balance. Below there is an abyss of bullshit, and there are people who are perpetually trying to push you off. A true ontology can only be based in biology, the biological substructure of our being from which emerges ontology. What secret powers are hidden inside of this biology? In what ways are we down-regulated? In what ways are states of consciousness denied from us or forgotten? Creating an ontology on the foundation of a weak biology, of weak bodies and weak minds, will be thin in comparison with the full possibilities. A thin tightrope that you have to tiptoe on, that you have to perpetually maintain your balance, fear of being thrown off into the abyss, instead of a tightrope. Could we not sleep on hammocks woven out of deep truth? Could we not build houses in the sky instead of being afraid that at any moment we're going to be pushed off into the abyss of bullshit, gored on the horns of the golden bull? Stress, anxiety, fear. As soon as that starts, you're going to fall off the tightrope. Concentration, poise, all the things for which you need to have free time and a safe space to relax so you can balance yourself. Instead, we have a world torn to pieces by wars visible and invisible. Empire versus empire, pushing pawns around, trying to tear the minds of their enemies apart with mimetic warfare. Trying to predict their future move with supercomputers that can manipulate elections. Generate new opinions. Use humans as the vessels for their ideas. Pneumachia, the war of ideas. Invisible warfare. You don't have to kill people anymore. You can just kill their minds and replace it with a virus. Increasingly difficult to distinguish between truth and lies. Not between truth and falsehood, but between truth and lies. We are being intentionally lied to fuck with our minds. Make sense of our sense making, make sense of our love making, make sense of our war making so we can put a stop to it. World peace. The only goal worth fighting a war for. Not a sick piece of damp human potential, but a piece of the fullness, human play.
Fighting a war for peace, is that one of those paradoxes that isn't actually a paradox, or is it actually a paradox? That's because, I mean, fighting a war in the sense of there is an enemy to be defeated. Once you defeat that enemy, do they stop being your enemy? No. At some point they will rise again unless you eradicate them, and now you've committed genocide. And so, yeah, what moral, you know, what moral superiority do you now have? Can war ever lead to peace, or is war, and it's like cigarettes, right? Every cigarette is a chain to the next cigarette. It's the same thing with war. Every war is a chain, is a link in the chain to the next war, kind of thing. It's exactly that same kind of cycle. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. It seems to me like that might actually be a paradox, and not the good kind. The truth and lies thing, the ontology only being as strong as the bodies and minds on which it's built. I really like that. I really like that. That feels foundationally important. And so it's not the ontology itself, it is the quality of the substrate from which it grew is the important thing. I really like that. But then, of course, the generation of that quality substrate requires ontologies which people buy into in order to make them fertilizers of said substrate, right? It's another one of those cyclical processes. The truth and lies, the the most disturbing part of this is not even that people are easily deceived, but they actually, in many cases, don't actually care about the truth anymore. The truth is only something to appear to be in order to, you know, make an argument or win an advantage or something like. Whether it is actually true or not is of no real importance. The notion of truth is now a thing to be beaten with, rather than a process of discovery and uncovery. Right, the whole word, the word itself has been ruined. Empires, yeah, empires. This is, of course, they do. They want people who are stupid. They want people who are compliant and stupid and obedient. This is, of course, what they want. Empires are predatory. I wondered, as you were speaking, the notion of predation or predacity or whatever it is, of empire upon citizen, of empire upon other empire and surrounding territory and so on. What if all of this woo-woo, yeah, let's all collaborate and love each other and blah, 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 blah. What if all of that is bollocks and the universe is actually predatory, right? The weak are meat and the strong do eat. What if that is the governing principle of the universe? And all of this stuff is just a fantasy, yeah, a story we like to tell ourselves about being these divine beings on a mission to, you know, make the universe realize itself more deeply and all of it. What if all of that is bollocks, and you know, that we are here to thin out the herd and we are in turn being thinned out? You know what I mean? Who knows what kinds of things are feeding on us as we speak right now? Yeah, sucking energies out of us that we don't even know that we have, because they've been sucked out of us since the moment we emerged into this environment. You know, these, you know, whatever, these cosmic leeches sucking our life force out of us, right? Keeping us just alive enough in order to be feeding them. Who knows? Who knows? It would explain a fucking lot if, in fact, the Earth was nothing more than a human farm matrix style, with aliens queuing up with straws to suck our brain juices out of us, or whatever it might be. You know, this kind of notion. So, you know, one has to hold room in a truly encompassing ontology, metaphysics, whatever. One has to make room for these kinds of possibilities and actually look them full in the face as genuine possibilities, so that one doesn't get too carried away and swept up in and arrogantly sure of one's own constructs and notions about how the world works and what it is and what our place in it is. Because, as we said before, the truth of the matter is, who the fuck knows?
Most language is sophistry. not used to write truth, but instead to confuse, to use and to abuse. Any word spoken in any order, spoken at any speed, to get somebody else to do what you want them to do. Even the greatest philosophers suffer from the drive to build a sticky little empire. Matrices of words into which unassuming undergraduates can get trapped in and have their life juice sucked into a little bit of symbolic immortality for the emperor. Humans are tribalists, and they need war. The question is, what is the scope? And what are the rules of the game? Do we allow it to be symbolic, like the Olympic Games, or the World Cup? Doesn't seem to be satisfying for the tribe's need for blood, to drink the blood of its enemies. What we need are war games. Bring back the gladiators. Put 20 Russians and 20 Chinese into an arena and let them fight to the death. And decide for that cycle, for those 4 years, they will have won. And every 4 years do the same thing. Allow some people, some soldiers, to sacrifice themselves, but put it into the correct ritual and symbolic context so it doesn't have to massacre millions of innocent people on the way. And you can decide about, oh yeah, you can have a little bit more territory, or yeah, you can win back the Ruhr, you can win back the Strasbourg or whatever. You can have it for a year, Germany, because you managed to kill 10 Frenchmen in a gladiator ring. And then 4 years later, give it back. Let the territory flow, just as the blood flows every 4 years. If you want to sacrifice and at least become aware of it, get willing participants. Instead of destroying the dreams of everybody else, so you can keep perpetuating a nightmare that you're trying to repress. You are murderous and you desire murder. And that's okay. New forms of sacrifice. New forms of giving. Great gift giving between countries. Great games of gifts, potlatches, okay, who can give the most? Who can sacrifice the most of their surplus wins?
Wars of giving. I love it. Wars of giving. Who can give more than everybody else? Wars are really interesting. I've been thinking about it a bit recently in response to something, and apart from the bloodlust, which there is undeniably a part of us which can be pulled out, which revels in the bloodlust. Undeniably, it is there. But I've wonder whether that is actually the main appeal of war and the fighting to the death, and whether it's not more to do with the single-mindedness of purpose that war brings about in the psyche, the willingness to sacrifice everything for a particular goal that you put above all else, right? Even your life. The goal is more important than your life. The willingness to endure great hardship in service of something which is bigger than you. I just wonder if this is not the actual appeal of war, is that it, in a way, it is only those extreme circumstances which are capable of bringing out the truly most noble depths of ourselves, perversely. It's really not sure if there's any mileage in this idea, but it does strike me. And you know, if there was some way to access that state of mind, that degree of focus, that degree of absolute involvement in the thing that you are doing, right? Your full participatory involvement, your willingness to give your life for it, where if that could somehow be harnessed without the explosions and the guns and the chemicals and the viruses and the nuclear radiation and the, you know, destruction of everything, if somehow there were games which were so cool and so intense and so involving that they brought us that without having, would that be enough? Would that be enough to slake our thirst for warfare? Or is the bloodlust a part of it? And if so, then yeah, the Gladiators is a good one. You could scale it down. I mean, as I understand it, this was what was done back in the day when individual, you know, when the numbers in your tribe were really important. You couldn't afford to lose people. If you did go to war, then each tribe or each group would send one champion, right? And the champions would have it out, and the winner won and the loser lost, and that was it. And, you know, it was only one person died in the conflict. And yeah, and so does that satisfy the need for bloodlust? If one person from the group goes and fights to the death against somebody else, and we're all rah, 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 our man brave and strong, your man weak and pathetic and evil and vile, right? All of this kind of thing. Does that, or is that just feeding the monster and making it worse? It's so hard to know. It's so hard to know. The tangentially related, you know, is it okay to make pedo porn using CGI, right? And let pedos have that and wank to that so that they can slake their thirst? Or does that just make their hunger for real children more intense? I simply don't know the answers to these kinds of questions. Experimentation needs to be done. There needs to be the freedom to ask these questions and say, hey, we don't know. Let's try it. Let's see what happens when we do it, with people who are fully willing to engage in the experiment with their eyes wide open. Do you know what I mean? And no coercion, no secretiveness. Transparency is another thing that has been coming up again and again and again in all kinds of different contexts, that actually nothing means anything unless anyone can look at it and see how it came about, right? See where it came from, see what were the motivations that drove its creation, what were the processes that led to its creation, who were the people involved, what are their associations, blah, 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 blah. All of this needs to be out in the open. Oh, it didn't ding, but that's end of time.